the church has inherited the power structures of the Roman Empire, and we still hold on to that. But the power that Jesus talked about was completely different. But we default to the worldly or the empire way of doing power, and it plays out in these ways that tend to be violating to other cultures, to other people, to other sexes, to everything you have mentioned is a thing.
Okay, welcome to another episode of ChristianPodcasts.com with Beto and Mili and our guest, Ric Olsen, pastor from the Beacon, Orange, in Orange, California, in the county of Orange, right? So it's a double orange.
Yes.
So Ric, welcome to the show. How does it feel to be a double oranger?
Juicy.
Juicy.
I love it.
Yeah, juicy. Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about who you are, a little bit of what you do, maybe. And then we're going to invite the Holy Spirit to take over this conversation.
Yeah, wow. I'm a husband. I've been married for 28 years. My wife, Carolyn. I have 2 kids that are grown and married. I pastor a church. I'm a chaplain for the fire department in our city of Orange, and also run a nonprofit called Love Orange, which is volunteerism, and I do some other things. So.
Wow. Incredible. Yeah. So there's a lot there where we can tap into. So in this conversation, we're just inviting the Holy Spirit. When you said, hey, what should I prepare for? We said nothing, like come totally unprepared. And I feel like
that was true.
Those are my favorite conversations where it's just like spontaneous. Let's see what God is doing. But one of the things I noticed, because we're part of this thing called SoCal Network, which is an association of North American Baptist churches in Southern California.
Yep.
Which to me, I mean, that whole thing in itself, it's like super interesting.
And it's a lot.
It's a lot, but the part that's so interesting to me is like, I never thought I was going to be a part of like a North American Baptist, like such a niche, specific, denomination.
Yeah.
But I've been part of North American Baptist for like the last 10 years, almost 11 years. So it's like, wow, this is family now.
Yeah.
Right. And you were saying some really interesting things last Saturday when we met, where you were saying missions have changed. So that really stirred me because I mean, I have emojis, right? And I'll put them on the screen just so people can see. But these emojis, I call them the spectrum of belief, or the beliefometer, where it goes from the worst to the best. And it's like blasphemous, skeptical, inspired, holy, and divine. And in many areas, I always find myself like being the skeptical. And I feel like I don't always want to be the skeptical. But you hear a lot of things happening in the church lately, right? And like church leadership and failure and moral failure and like all these things that is like, oh man, like it just feels like all my life I've heard like the same thing happening over and over again. That sometimes when I hear things that usually would excite me, I'm like, I'm skeptical. So one of them was missions, because I feel like, oh, missions is amazing. But then I feel like missions has this other side of missions where it was more like, kind of like capitalistic, imperialistic in nature, where, okay, I don't know, some people might say, the white man is here to dominate and say, okay, Jesus is here and boom. But I feel like because of globalism and kind of like where we're at, it's 2026, which is crazy to think, right? I think all of these preconceptions about how we did missions as a church have changed or are shifting, even if we are not aware. So one of the things you were saying in this thing is like, wow, we used to send out, as like USA used to send out missionaries all over the world. Now some of the missionaries are coming to the US.
Yes.
And it's not the first time I hear that. Okay. So one is from what you said, people from Japan are coming to the US, and we've never experienced that. Like it's new to us to say, oh, how do we do missions in the US? But I've heard also, and this is maybe like a complete other take, but maybe like a couple years ago, we were talking with a guy that wrote a book named Ric Costanzo, and he's somewhere in like the Midwest. And he was saying, well, a lot of the people that are migrating to the US, regardless of, like illegal, legal, like all of that. But he was saying a lot of the people that are coming to the US are already believers, right? They come, like they're following Christ already. And in a sense, they're kind of like missionaries to the US because where they live, I mean, they follow Jesus faithfully. And I'm not saying this is the case like with every immigrant, right? But I feel like I see a lot of that because we've been immigrants for 20 years in America, and we were in a like Hispanic church, where people were from all over Latin America, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of Christians from all over Latin America who love Jesus, and they just want to showcase Jesus to their neighbor wherever it might be, in their workplace, in their, I don't know, their kids' schools or in their neighborhoods. And so all of that is like, oh, wow. So it's the second time I hear like things are shifting with missions. So is there anything to that? I don't know. Maybe that's a good way to kick off.
Well, there's a ton to that. And there's a huge, we just spent a whole week as a group. I'm part of our leadership team for NAB talking about what that could look like and what does that and what is just the status of things. Because we have missionaries in war zones now. We have missionaries that have to check in by using different secret apps so that we know that they're safe when they get where they go to. The many of our fields now that over the decades that we've been invested there, those mission fields are now have matured to the place that they are taking leadership on their own. And so our place there is to be a servant to them, not to continue to kind of go in and do the work, but to do the work that they want to do. So how do we change that relationship? And now, because many of those people are coming to America, not just because for whatever reason, now those churches now have the ability to send missionaries, and they're sending them back. And it's usually to their own population. They're not sending their expat population. They're not necessarily sending missionaries to the general American population, but typically to the migrant population that's come here. We have a huge conference in Brazil, and we have a lot of Brazilians that are immigrating to the United States, and a bunch of them are in Boston. And so some of the missionaries from the Brazilian Baptist Conference are coming here, and they're trying to reach Brazilians that are living here. There's something about people being away from home that they're more open to new things that they wouldn't necessarily consider at home. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but in many of these situations, when they're away from home and they're exposed to Christianity, they're more open to it than they would be back home.
Yeah, I think we're craving for community.
Yeah.
Man, okay, so I'm going to say something kind of funky and weird, but so be it, right? Because I'm a little bit like that anyways.
So it's not going to be shocking.
Yeah. So the Grammys just happened, and Bad Bunny won like the best album of the year. And it was so interesting because I've never listened really to Bad Bunny. And I normally don't listen to like lyrics that have like explicit words or content. But then out of curiosity, I'm like, well, who is this Bad Bunny that everybody's talking about? And then it's causing like such a havoc with like, is he going to sing at the Super Bowl?
Grammy in the US, and his music is in Spanish.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like the overall, it's not like the Latin Grammy.
Yeah.
This is like the Grammy,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. And the guy's from Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico, I mean, it's an interesting state or nation or whatever it is, because it's kind of like, it's the US, but it's not. And it's Latino, but it's also the US. So it's like, wow, it's just conflicting, right? But then I was analyzing some of his lyrics. I'm like, wow, this is nostalgic, because in a sense, I feel like, not that he's a missionary, right? But what I get from his lyrics is that he's missing the part that where, hey, we are from Puerto Rico, but people are leaving Puerto Rico to like pursue these other things in America, right?
Yeah.
And some of his lyrics is like, wow, they like one of them, I don't know if it's like too political or not, but it says, I hope basically that Puerto Rico doesn't end up like what happened in Hawaii, where it's like they took over the island and now it's no longer like Hawaii, like its own identity, right? So he's saying kind of like things like that, and all of that to say, I'm like, wow. I mean, it feels like he's deeply rooted in like growing up in Puerto Rico, and his lyrics, he has a lot of that. I grew up in San Juan and the sunset, and as a Latino immigrant, that moves me a lot, regardless if the guy is Christian or not, and like all that sort of stuff. It's just like, wow, I understand that concept, because immigrants, like we left something that was dear to us, right? Like where we grew up, and the things that we were familiar with, and our family, and just the day-to-day of life. And now you're in a different place, so it's kind of like the shock. But some of us carry the beauty that we know Christ, right? And how do we still represent Christ in this new place where we're living now? So anyways, all that to say, I feel like things are shifting, the world is shifting, and missions are shifting, but also, maybe that if I can kind of like pair what happened in like with Bad Bunny and the music industry, is that idea that like if missions was a imperialistic thing, right? I feel like Bad Bunny is saying, can we just have our own, can we be our own ethnic group in a sense, right? And you're saying some of that, with like, you were sharing about like Cameroon being one of the countries in which the North American Baptists had missionaries. Yep. And then you kind of like gave it back to them, and you're going to help us lead now. Yes. We're just going to be servants to you. Yep. Right? I remember also, this is maybe not missions, but it's also an interesting idea. What is it? Hong Kong? Like a few years ago, remember Hong Kong released the government that was from Britain and said, okay, we're giving it back to you because we said 100 years we were going to rule, and then we're going to pass it on to you. Yeah. So you have little movements like that, which are kind of like political, but at the same time, they're ethnic related. And now you have like the thing with Venezuela, right? That happened, like who's leading there. Yeah. So I feel like there's a little bit of that melting pot of like culture and political stuff, but then how is God working in the middle of all of that? Yeah. Right. So what is maybe the next step that's happening in that arena, or where you feel like God's moving as far as like mission goes, and our understanding maybe of like geopolitical stuff?
I feel like it all comes down to power, because Kyle Strobel wrote a book called The Way of the Dragon and the Way of the Lamb that talks about how the church has inherited the power structures of the Roman Empire, and we still hold on to that, even in the titles that we have. Lead pastor, senior pastor. We even though we say we're not a hierarchical church the way some of the old school churches are, we'll leave that conversation separate, but we still hold on to some of the power structures, even in the way we make decisions. Absolutely. And even in the way our families work out. Yes. And so we have this, even the way we think about power is still a remnant of the Roman Empire, of the way Satan has always tried to get us to think about power. But the power that Jesus talked about was completely different. And so that way of doing missions, that way of doing family, that way of doing the organization that we call the church, the body of Christ, is very different, but we default to the worldly or the empire way of doing power, and it plays out in these ways that tend to be violating to other cultures, to other people, to other sexes, to other ways of thinking, political views and stuff like that. And so I think when we can recognize, it's almost like taking the eyes, or taking the seeing the emperor as naked. When we recognize he's naked, we can acknowledge that, then we can move down a path of healing and doing things differently. And I think that's what's happened in missions. We are moving into places where we can recognize that Hawaiian culture is probably, you mentioned Hawaii. I think Hawaiian culture is one of those places where the aloha culture that we experience today is this beautiful blend of the ethnicity of the Hawaiians and the love of Jesus. And when you bring those together, you get the Hawaiian culture. If you took out Christianity, you wouldn't have the Hawaiian culture that everybody loves. And today there's a movement to reestablish a non-Christian Hawaiian identity. And I don't know that they really understand what that means, because they think it's this aloha thing. And if there has been a few positive ways that that's happened, that we've seen a blending of that, where we can respect the local culture and allow that faith to shape what their version of the church looks like, what the body of Christ looks like. But there's so many times in my own missionary experience, I experienced places where people led from fear. Not letting women to have a Bible study because they might gossip, and we can't let that happen. Or telling people that they weren't saved unless they were baptized, because that's how we control them. I literally had a leader tell me we lose control if we do that. So those parts of power that hold on to power, I think, in everything you have mentioned is a thing.
Wow. Yeah. So missions are shifting. There's like political inclinations because of power, even through missions. And it reminds me of the movie. And this is all because I guess my main like big question is like, what are missions going to look like in like the next 50 years? Right? Because my skeptical side is always kind of like, things are shifting. It has been very imperialistic in a sense. I see the beauty of some of what's happened, but also because of like globalism and like the internet. I mean, right? Like technically you can preach from wherever you're at to any other nation. I mean, now like YouTube, it's like dubbing your voice into basically any other language.
Yeah.
Right? So you could have any pastor preach in Korean or, Hindu or whatever language of the world, and basically preach the good news of Christ, or at least whatever message they want to preach through the internet, and people can hear it, right? So it's like, wow, that has really changed the way we thought of missions, where it's like, oh, I need to go somewhere, which it's still true, right? But the messaging of the news is like, oh, you don't need to go anywhere. Like we've been in Costa Mesa for the last 20 years, and we're preaching to all the world because we have cameras that broadcast to all the world, right? So that's the interesting part to me, that because of this shift, like cultural shift and maybe spiritual shift, and we're in a new millennial. I mean, that alone is like, wow, it's a transition, not just from a century, it's like thousands of years, right? From 1,000 to 2,000. So it's a big shift. And all of that to say, because of my skeptical side, I always felt like, like where is all this going? Like I see the beauty of some of the good points of, like, for example, YWAM, right? Youth with a Mission, or I don't know, whatever missionary organization. But I also feel like, oh, maybe like I see the part where those were a little bit like hype. Like, oh, it was just kind of like a cool travel experience of some sort, right? Because it was short mission trip. So it's only like 2 weeks versus, for example, like we know some pastors who went to Peru and they've been there for like 44 years. Yeah. Right. So it's like, oh, wow, that's commitment. Yeah. Right.
They still have accent. Spanish. And I love their accent.
Yes, the bad riggers.
I never lost my accent too.
I don't think so, right? But I see a difference. Like, oh wow, somebody that's committed to the land they were called into. Yeah. And this kind of like, and not to say they're bad, right? But really, what can you do in 2 weeks, right? Yeah. And not to minimize the power of God and say, oh yeah, maybe God did work in those 2 weeks, right? But I feel like. And then also, what is the longer commitment about? Is it just like showing up for 40 years and what? Yeah. Right? Is it about power? Is it about... And so anyways, all that, remember the movie The Gates of Splendor?
Yes.
With the missionaries in Ecuador?
Nate Saints and yes.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like those were like legit missions, right? Because
Yeah.
they're trying to say what the gospel is almost like in their own language.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember they had this like little saying about like one of the Waraonis. He says, I saw him jump the great serpent.
Yes.
Right. And he was basically saying like he conquered death. Right. So the people that were trying to explain to them like who is Jesus, they're like, oh, there it is, you know, in your own language with your own like
Yes.
concepts.
Yeah.
That's what God is doing. That's what he's about. He wants you to jump the great serpent into eternal life, basically. So I'm like, oh, wow. Like that to me, I feel like, oh, wow, that was like powerful mission work. Right. So anyways, I mean, I'm stuck in that. Like, what's it going to look like in the next 50 years? You know, how can we be faithful to Jesus and not to like political or just power in general, you know?
Yeah, that's a huge. There's so many different angles we can come at this because there is that power angle, and I think the Western church is beginning to recognize that we need to release power. And there's just because a culture is not Western doesn't mean it's evil. And so we can see, I think we're beginning to see beauty in some of these other cultures, that just because it's different doesn't mean it's evil. And so,
okay, unpack that a little bit, because that sounds profound. So like the Western culture, we're used to it, right? So it's like, oh, Christmas is like the Easter, like all the things that we know, because we grew up in those.
Yeah.
But you're saying when we look at, I don't know, maybe Africa, or maybe, I don't know, people playing weird music to us or whatever, we're like, oh, maybe that's not Christ-like, right? Or the Waraonis, right? Like, oh man, these guys are semi-naked.
Yeah,
maybe that's not Christ-like.
Well,
right?
we even have a saying that, you know, they've gone native, right? When they have, and there were missionaries who were criticized for becoming too much like the local culture.
Oh, wow.
And some of the most effective early missionaries were ones who were able to start wearing the local clothes. We might call it cultural appropriation now. Some others, it's just fitting in to the local culture and trying to be a part of it and to explain from within what it was. I think a powerful example of this is probably the prophet Daniel, who was within, he worked within the context of one of the most evil empires. He wasn't just a citizen, he was a higher up, a leader, he was a mover and shaker within it, and yet he was still a righteous man. He was still able to keep his faith. Now there were things he would not do. And I think that's an important thing that we should recognize, is there are things that we don't just become pagan and call it Jesus. We have to be discerning about how we step into that culture and what things are part of it. And I think some of the conversation about the paganism of some of the holidays that we serve today, that we use today, that we celebrate, Easter, for example, we call it Easter because it's the pagan goddess Easter, but and I don't believe that we've taken over that holiday and stuff like that. But there are other holidays along the way that Christianity has adopted, and instead of banning it, they've Christianized it, and people continue to celebrate those holidays. But that's what Christianity does. It redeems, right? It doesn't just wipe out what was before. It redeems what was there and turns it into something that reflects the kingdom. Yes. And so I think those are the places. If we're discerning, we can go in. Now, you can't redeem a pagan child sacrifice. You know, that's a place you can't do, right? But there are other things that are, that you can go in and you can redeem and celebrate and change that. And I think this is one of the things. Our congregation has about a third of our congregation comes from Asian backgrounds, and so when they go home to some of their countries because they've lost a relative, there's a place of ancestor worship that happens. And so how do you walk into that funeral and still honor the relative without worshiping the relative, and not engage in a pagan ceremony, but still let them know you love and honor
Be present.
the history. That's a huge conversation for many of our non-Western cultures is what do you do with the ancestors? And I think even in southern Mexico with some of the Dia de Muertos stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's about remembering the ancestors, but how do you do that in a way that doesn't engage in paganism at the same time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like looking, like Paul said, like analyze everything and then see what's good about it, right? And I think like that's why we can watch a movie and then discern, what is the messaging. Like, I mean, it's crazy because like the movie K-pop Demon Hunters,
yes,
it's clearly not a Christian movie, right? But it has some overlapping elements of like, they're demon slayers and they're kind of like battling for the greater good of society, and I mean it gets complex because some people will say no, I mean that's completely not of Christ, and I could understand that and say, oh yeah, you're completely right. But I feel like as Christians, like, can we see the good in it? Like, can we look at it and even though there might be things we won't agree and they would just won't be parallel with the Bible even, right? But you can, I mean, that's culture, right? That's just happening. It's a movie, right?
I'm glad you mentioned that movie because that's part of one of my hobbies is the theological messages behind movies and
really
kind of evaluating that. And that particular movie, my daughter and I have these great conversations about that and topics, and we do a series on it in the summer. But that particular movie, it gives you a very clear view of shame culture, where the shame culture, some of the Eastern cultures are shame cultures. And it gives you a very clear picture of what that means to live in that. And people in that movie are trapped by that. Mm-hmm. And so even though you may not agree with the actual message of the movie, it's a diagnostic. So it's easier now for me to understand someone coming from that culture and what they're wrestling with, because now I've seen that and I've seen it play out in a synopsis form in a movie. So
yeah, that's cool. Okay, so yeah, now we're moving a little bit more into like not just missions, but the context of culture and how intertwined we are now. Because to me that's kind of like the point with missions. It's changing so much.
Yeah.
Because of like globalism, like all these things, like we can experience in a sense like a foreign culture through media, right? And like, oh, this is kind of like how they think, and this is what they believe in through a movie, right? Because it's so powerful that these stories can be told on the internet. And this is, I mean, K-pop is probably like one of the most seen movies on Netflix history.
Yeah.
Right. But then, for example, and I don't know how good it's going to be, but another movie is coming out. It's the Magician's Nephew. Right. By C.S. Lewis. It's been filmed by Greta Gerwig, which filmed Barbie. So some people are hesitant to like, oh, is she going to respect the values of C.S. Lewis and all these things, which I understand. But also on the other end, I feel like, wow, I mean, so many Christians value C.S. Lewis as kind of like as an apologist for Christ, a defender of the Christian faith in a sense. So I'm curious to know how this movie is going to impact, because it's going to be clearly like on Netflix and they're going to release it as a movie. How is it going to impact like the global culture of those who don't know Christ, but like us, they might be like, huh, that's how Christians think, or if they know anything, right? Like, oh, is the lion supposed to be like a Jesus figure, and why? Maybe even go to the Bible and like, oh, like I never saw it like that. So now like media will be impacting like globally, without kind of like it's kind of like a different type of missions, right? But we can engage in the conversation. So let's talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about kind of like engaging the culture, like what's going on in just like maybe media, music, with this whole thing with like Bad Bunny, and he's going to be at the Super Bowl. What's healthy for Christians to engage with, without becoming pagan, like you said, and saying, oh, everything Bad Bunny says, I agree. No, but there's some things where I can relate to him, right? yeah, what's I don't know, what's healthy even in your like tackling of movies with your daughter?
Yeah, I think if you look for a great example, I hate to be, I hope this isn't cheesy to think, but The Chosen is a great where the medium that speaks to the people has been adopted in a way, the comedy, the storytelling, and all of those kinds of things have been adopted in such a way that it's caught not just the Christian audience, but the world, because people can relate to, the realness of, it's not just St. Paul and St. Peter and St. John. And, it's not just that. It's like, oh, that's Peter. And that, there was a realism. So whatever method they were using, yes, it's about the life of Jesus. So it's going to look like 2,000 years ago, but they're framing it in a very modern storytelling way. And so I guess that's probably not a perfect example of that, but it is in terms of what is it that is happening in culture that we can use to tell the story. And I think that's a great one. The David series, whatever you agree or disagree about some of the things that are going on and some of those, but the fact that people are talking about it, and isn't that the point?
Yes.
Isn't the point? So the point isn't, wow, look at the special effects. There's a message behind those special effects. And if you're only talking about the special effects, you're missing the point in the first place.
Yeah.
And so, but it's getting people talking. I think that's the most powerful thing.
Yeah. Cool. Mili, what do you think about, you've always said that you wanted us to be a missionary family. And I feel like we're, in a sense, we are, we're living it because our mission is just to love people the way Jesus loves people. And not that we are perfect, but that is our hope and mission and goal. So what are your questions when it comes to missions? Things that you would like to know, where maybe you would like to do or ask, or like, what is, a big question is just like, what is missions, right? But
so can I just interject real quick?
Yes.
Because this method of communicating is taking what is popular right now and the format and everything. And yes, so you guys are doing the same thing The Chosen is, but in a different platform, right? So you are communicating the gospel in a way that is, so that's that. So there's a very real sense that is, you guys are a great example of that as well.
Yeah.
Plus I know what you do in your neighborhood. So that's,
since I was little, I have a huge heart for people. I just love people, and was hard for me to understand who I am, right? Why God give me this wiring or this
love?
No, like my identity, right? I know now it's in Jesus Christ, and He made me in His image.
yes.
So when I understood this, it's like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
But I always been a leader. When I was, in middle school, I was kind of leader, and then I check all my background, and I was always raising my head, like me, like for my mother. Because it's like, oh, this girl always signed for everything, like me, like to be in any kind of show or bring. I remember one time they were asking who can bring like cow poop for the garden.
Oh no!
And I raised my hand.
And your mom is like,
and I raised her without having a car. So I asked my mom to buy a whole huge bag full of poop, and she's been carrying this like blocks and blocks. I think took us like 30 minutes to get home to the school every morning. So she's carrying this huge bag, like now I think like for my mother.
Your mom really loved you, Mili.
Yes,
wow.
Yes. And I can be in a place eating with homeless.
Yeah.
Or I can be in a place with the billionaires, and I don't feel more than anyone or less than anyone. Yeah. And it's a huge gift that I received from the Lord. It's I just love it who I am
Yeah.
in him.
Yeah.
You know, and now with Jesus, like you said, like it's like if I can do that in the past, I can do it better now.
Yeah.
And we've been reading the Beatitudes, and like, wow, to be a missionary is to practice that. Like Jesus did 100%.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the most wonderful thing. It's only 8 Beatitudes.
Yeah.
And if we live that as knowing who we are in Jesus Christ, it's huge. Because I can deliver people from who's been oppressed in their hearts.
Yeah.
Because the devil do a great job outside telling people who they are and what their sin is. So they're not free. They're not walking in freedom. Even us as a Christians, we know that Jesus died on the cross for us and for our sins, and we still believe that we are huge sinners and we can do nothing. I know He is the one who does everything, but we're going to sin every day.
Yeah.
Every day we're going to sin because that's who we are.
Yeah.
You know, but God loves us so much that if we come to Him, He can give us that freedom. You're a new creature. You can heal people because you have the power. You know, we were invited to this beautiful church, and I was telling them, can you listen to Jesus' words? He told His disciples, better if I go, because I'm going to send you someone, not something, someone who's going to live in you, and you're going to do better miracles, better work than I did. So reflecting on that, like, who brings people to life in this day, in this generation? I experience miracles.
Yeah.
I see that in my husband. He was like going to a mountain, experiencing this pain for months, and he just felt a click. And he was like, nobody can stop him, you know, being like, he healed me. He was like, oh my gosh, he came over home and he was telling that story to everybody in the whole universe. Yeah, like all our neighbors, people, and like everybody he meets, he was telling, God heal me, God heal me. At the beginning, I was crying and crying. Like a few months later, I was like, Beto, I know the story now. But we are called to be missionaries, right? Even if we are in our home, we are called to be teachers.
Yeah.
I'm a teacher for my kids. That's my first ministry, right? My kids. And then if I go outside, a lot of people reject me for who I am. And my sister-in-law was telling me, well, Mili, you need to understand, but sometimes it's not about Jesus. It's about maybe not everybody's going to like you. Yeah, no. But that I understand. But sometimes, the most of the time, is for who I am. Because if I see that you need Jesus, I'm going to come and speak to you and tell you what you're doing wrong with love. But people doesn't like to hear that, what are you missing or what are you doing wrong? You know, I have a neighbor, which I try so hard to reach out to her. And when I hear that she just want to build a wall to don't see me, broke my heart. Like, honey, if I'm just bringing you food, I'm trying to be kind to you. I reach out to her when she was like devastated and crying, and I hug her and I pray for her, but she was on trance. She didn't hear me at all. I don't think if she remembers, maybe she was a little bit high with some chemicals. Now she's moving, and I was like super sad. Like, I wish I had that opportunity to connect, but it's not her time, right? And people have free will, but I try to love everybody around me. And I love missionaries. I think even if they go for 2 weeks, for me, that is so special. Just to get out of your bubble, get out of your comfort zone, and go and reach out another country, another community. Even if you go to LA and do missions in LA and you get out of Orange County, that would be wonderful, because we're the same country, the same USA, but it's so much need in here too.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need to go so far away to do missions. I just drive 5 minutes from my home, and I'm right there doing missions with the poor. Because Orange County, we have poor communities where I know families, they live families in one department. They're like 3-4 families living in one department.
Yeah.
And everybody's working a lot and they barely make it.
Yeah.
So it's so close to me.
Yeah.
You know, and I wish we can see that more, right? And help more and love more and really ask deeper questions. And I was telling people around me, like, when you ask someone how are you, and they tell you, you just pray for them. Asking, can I pray for you? And just listen, right? And see what God can do. That's what I do, and nobody say no. Like, can I pray for you? Yes. Sometimes they're agnostic, sometimes they're atheists, sometimes they're Muslims. I was chatting with a Jewish the other day, and he invited me to his congregation. I was just asking questions like, so you are waiting for the Messiah? I was like, tell me, how is that? When is coming for you, you know? And he's like, yeah, he's coming, you know, because they're going to insert a chip, and we're talking about technology. And they said, and all these are signs that the Messiah is coming. So like, okay, so tell me, you don't believe in Jesus, right? And he say, yeah, you know, like, as a Jewish, we can go to all the churches. And like, no, I'm asking you. Who is Jesus for you, right? Do you believe in him? And he ended up telling me, like, oh, you need to come. Like, I would love to go. I love culture. And I feel, because I asked him, explain me, are you living by the law still? How you do it? Because, you know, like, that's why for the Jewish was so hard to accept Jesus, that he was God, because the law, they love the law. And if you're out of that, it's like, it was so hard for them because it took them so long and so much work that now Jesus comes and telling me this is not that important.
It's fulfilled.
Yeah.
How? So that they can believe it, they can imagine.
Yeah.
It was so hard. They work so hard. They need to learn the book and live that book. And they were faking it, right? Because nobody can really live by that rule. So it's so hard.
Yeah.
And I think they cheat. I don't think they're doing that. Because like, yeah, you know, like, they don't need this, they don't need that.
But I think your story illustrates the tension, the paradox that we live in as Christians, because on the one hand, we are told that we are children of the King, right? And there is and there is a beauty, there's an ability, there's a freedom to love, there's a joy that comes with that. There's and if we lean only into that piece of it, we can, and we've seen this happen, go out as missionaries and just thump people on the head with that message and expect that, why wouldn't you receive this? But the other part of that message is the fact that I'm a sinner, saved by grace, but without that grace, I would, whatever, right? So there's that tension of, so we are both in, and we see that lived out so beautifully in Jesus, who was not a sinner, but he lived the humility in washing the feet of his disciples that we're supposed to live. And yet we tend to live in that tension. We're going to go out and conquer the world because what we've got is the best, and we're going to go do it, and Jesus is going to bless it. And on the other hand, we forget this side. But if we live on this end, we're not going to go out, and we're not going to, because what have I got to offer the world? And there's that middle ground that we need to live in as Christians, and that plays out at our missions.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to Love Orange, because that's part of what you do. And just to give people a little bit of context, there's a nonprofit called Trellis here in Orange County that it's really trying to make every city have some sort of version of like how to love your city, right? So love Orange, love Costa Mesa, love Newport Beach. And I mean, it's really like it's called Trellis because it's kind of like the structure behind where the plant grows, right? So they're saying we want to bring churches, businesses, and the government together so that they can tackle the city's needs, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
what's interesting is that even the Orange County, I have a different wiring when it comes to cities because we come from a big city in Mexico called Guadalajara. So to me, it's really hard to understand like Costa Mesa. It's a city of like 200,000+ people, and it's like, wow, that shouldn't even be a city. It's so small. To me, it feels like Orange County should be the city, but no. But it's cool, that kind of like there's Orange County has like so many different cities, and every city has like its own government and
Culture.
culture, right?
Yeah.
So speak a little bit about that because I feel like that's almost like local mission oriented to a very specific city,
Yeah.
right? And then there's the overall like Trellis hoping like every city does that kind of like missionary work in their own city.
Yep.
But you're one of the leaders of Love Orange. So
Yeah.
how is that for you? Like
And
what you
Orange
experience?
is bigger than Costa Mesa, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, is it bigger? Or the city of Orange?
I think they're almost about the same size.
Okay.
I know our fire department is a little bit bigger than your fire department, but I don't know how that plays out. Just barely. But I don't know how that numbers wise. We're 135,000 in Orange, so people. But in terms of Trellis and OC United have kind of led the charge on helping to get established the Love Our Cities model here in Orange County. So we've got 13 cities in Orange County of the 34 that have a Love Our Cities model. Love Our Cities model is based up in Modesto, California, and there's actually almost 100 cities now that have a Love Our Cities model across the world.
Wow.
We have Love Singapore, Love, I think it's Shanghai or something like that. It's there's a couple other cities that are out there that are global. Most of them are in California because this is where it started, but all across the nation, we have different parts of that.
And are those all like Christian based? Like it all started from like a believer movement?
It did start here in Costa Mesa with what we used to call Serve Day. And we used to try and get the churches to take a day to serve the community. Mm-hmm. And that technically the registration program that was there, once the Costa Mesa and Orange County cities stopped doing that, someone bought that model from one of our local churches and took it up to Modesto, and they exploded it and made it bigger and made a website that goes with it and stuff like that. So all the other cities franchise the rights from that to be able to use that model to do that. So it did start out as, we describe it in Orange as a gift to the city from the churches. We want to create a mutual playground because churches and government do not like to give money or support churches. So, and churches oftentimes, unfortunately, don't like to support what's happening in other churches. So by creating a mutual playground, a neutral playground, where the businesses, the churches, the community, the civic government, everybody can come together and play together, but it's run by the local churches. So whoever holds the license for that has to sign a doctrinal statement. So
wow. Okay, so tell us about what does that look like in practicality as a member of the church, right?
Yeah.
Like you follow Jesus.
yeah.
What is it like loving your city, knowing that maybe people have like assumptions of what Christianity is, and even like especially here in America, maybe even that like separation of church and state, right? So a Christian that's loving the city, kind of like through government. I mean, there's government involved in like when you do rallies or whatever for the city, because that's what happens here in Costa Mesa, right? Like we're at the civic center or city hall and things like that, where it's like, okay, clearly Christians are are being part of the movement, and they're with the city, and some people might be hesitant when they look at that. So I don't know what is helpful to be like a believer who's, to like the question we were asking at the beginning, you know, like we're not pursuing power, or are we, right? Like, or how do you tell people, no, it's not about power. It's like, what is it about?
Boy, the minute it's about power, we've lost the game, because that's been the fight for such a long time, is for power. And now I think many churches are beginning to recognize that it's not about power, but it goes back to that question of what does it mean to be a missionary? You know, how do we respect culture? And we have, in Orange County, we have 34 cities. We have even places that don't have cities in our that are just part of the county, and each one of them has a different culture. We have equestrian cultures, we have Latino cultures, we have Asian cultures within each of our different cities that make a different makeup, and some of them are more wealthy, some of them are more poor. So what the needs of that community are different. And when the churches can come in and say to the leadership, and this is each of the Love Our Cities programs does. That's their job, is their city. And so each of them will look a little different, because all of our cities look very different. What we're doing in Love Orange is very different than Love Irvine, very different than Newport Beach, very different than Costa Mesa or Huntington Beach. So some of that is because of the age of the city. Orange is 120 years old. Costa Mesa is 65 years old. So, you know, there's difference in dynamics. Irvine is way younger, so they've got all brand new buildings and, you know, stuff like that. So being able to partner with the city looks different. But if we can come alongside, and it used to be the church was the place where people, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need a job, they would go to the church. And in the past 100 years, because we didn't want to be social gospel driven, the church has backed off and said, nope, we can't do those things. Otherwise, people will think that it's all about that. And so we've kind of handed all that off to other people, particularly the government. And now when the government can't do some of those things, who's going to do it? Well, someone's going to step in, because we live in a culture that has been infused with Christian ethics. I had some atheist friends that we were talking to, and they said, well, we do. And I said, yeah, but you don't serve because your atheist dogma says you need to be kind to your neighbors. You serve because you have adopted the idea from Christian culture and Christian heritage. You've adopted our heritage and values and said that's a good idea. Not because it plays out in atheism well, but because it plays out in the community well. And by the way, I'm an atheist, right?
Yes.
So that's we live in an environment that's decreasingly Christian in the number of people who are believing, but increasingly they have still been infused with the Christian message enough that they know that we're supposed to love our neighbors. Because that has never been an automatic part of culture. When the Black Plagues hit Europe in 1700 years ago, the Christians stayed in town and took care of the dying. And even the emperors were like, who are these people? They take care of our dead. They don't even take care of just their dead. They're taking care of our dead. What is that? And that's the kind of servanthood we're called to. So if the church can show up again and just be servants without a cry for power, because oftentimes power comes and we have to be careful and pay attention to the fact, there's a power play there. I'm not going to take that. I'm just going to serve. When we keep saying that, we feel it when you get invited to go to some event and someone gives you the red carpet seat.
Yes.
And you're like, well, yeah, sure, I'll take it.
Yeah.
There's a choice in there. And part of that is completely innocent, and it is the gift of your host. But there's also a moment where like, well, yeah, maybe they'll think I'm a big shot if I sit in this chair. There's that thing that goes on inside of us, and that's the battle for power that we have to play off at the same time. So when we come to these events and we show up and we do serving our city, our goal is we have to be careful constantly that we are only there as servants. And so to come in and to say that and to remind people that that's what we are for, because for so long we've walked away from being servants.
Yeah, that's why
Just been
the
proclaimers.
Beatitudes,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
blessed are the meek, they will inherit the earth. Why?
That's that one
because
side.
we are called to be servants, and as servants have that heart. Jesus had that heart.
Yeah.
I've just loving it because, it's the first time that a church invited us to give a message. And for me, it was big because I was telling them too that sometimes I compare myself to Gollum, from the Lord of the Rings. My precious. When we see what we want, it's like, who's my true master right now? Who's controlling me?
That's that moment. Take this seat, right? Precious is in that seat.
Yeah. Get out of here. Whew. It's not about me. It's not about me.
Yeah. Master, follow me. I'll take you there because I want the precious. Right?
So it's like, oh, God, help me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, he had his perfect moment. In the past, I was not ready because probably would be all about me. Yeah. And this time, I know who have the control and who have the real power, and him through me. Like, how scary, right?
Yeah.
Can be. Yeah, but power and money, that's what transform people. And people's lost because of that.
Well,
and that's the things that the devil offer.
Yeah.
Money and power.
And numbers. And numbers. Because it would be easy. I might step on a sacred cow here if I do this.
Oh, good.
But for example, and there's lots of programs like this, so I'm not just saying, and it's often programs that are sacred cows. But for example, and I've had this happen, so I've seen this happen. A pastor will be very happy if 300, 400, 500, 600 kids shows up for VBS. They don't pay attention to the fact that most of those kids were dropped off from other churches that their parents are just trying to get rid of them for the week.
That's
But we reached 600 kids for Jesus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
You
just have the bigger program.
at the bigger place.
But what would it look like if we had VBS in backyards in every neighborhood? Maybe 60 neighborhoods with 10 kids, and you still have 600. But those kids are going to be known. Their families are going to be reached. They're going to be kids that your people know and have a relationship with and can follow up with. And some of them are probably Christians, but some of them are just neighborhood kids that their parents would use some time off too. Or maybe there's a relationship there that's a part of that. So, but if you tell an average senior pastor, lead pastor that, no, we want the program. We want it to be seen that we have 600 people in our building, because our building is going to be empty the rest of the week if we don't have something happening here. If you do it in the neighborhoods, it's less. So I have to be careful and stepping in.
No, that's good. I mean, now you're going into like Brian Sanders territory. Brian Sanders was my like 5th episode ever or something like that on the podcast. And so if anybody wants to go check that one out, it was really good because we were talking about, it was during COVID and we were talking about what is the church. And he was saying, I think we as Christians need to come to come to one conclusion together. Like, what is the church? What is it supposed to look like in the next 100 years? Right. And I think that I want to end with that, because as you're saying, loving our neighbor, loving our city, not giving into like power or political power or the seat at the table, like, sit here because now you're someone, right? So to be careful about that. And what's beautiful is like Jesus said, when somebody invites you to a table, sit on the regular seat.
Yeah.
And then if they move you into like the seat of privilege, then you will say, oh, wow, like now you're having that seat versus sitting on the main seat and then saying, hey, that doesn't belong to you. Go sit on the crappy seat or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool because I feel like in that way, he's in charge. And really, if you sit at the place of honor, it's not because of you. You're really honoring him. Or he's the one that's been honored because you're on that seat, right? And I think it's just a different attitude in pointing to like Like when they invited us to this church, it wasn't like, oh, look at me, now I'm teaching or preaching. Like, not at all. You know, it's just a privilege to talk about Jesus
And worship together.
and worship together. And that was the goal. It's like, oh, okay, honor Christ, honor the Lord. And so anyways, all that, I feel like in missions and maybe the mission of the church in the world is to give honor to Christ,
Amen.
right? And give honor to Christ through surrendering and saying, I'm going to take like the servant way, right? And say, I'm not looking for a position.
And I'm thinking of Romans 8, where they say, if we share his glory, we're going to share his suffering too.
Oh, wow.
So that for me, it's a huge thing because I experience pain in my life, even if I'm a follower of Jesus.
Yeah.
I experience his glory and his peace and his love. And, you know, I just praying that yesterday, God, I have so much peace in my heart. Please, I don't want to get out of this place. Feels so good. You're everything. But and I am experiencing pain in my body, right? And I have experienced pain, what is happening in the country with the oppressed. It's so painful. But the invitation is, you know, we were talking with, being part of conversation with Ian Stevenson. And he's like, how we can sit down on a table with ICE and with the illegals. And how we can love each other. Because it's so much fight right now. And everybody have their reasons, right? But I just will like to say that when the love always wins, and the Jesus is for everybody, not just for the Gentiles or the Jewish, it's for everyone, you know? And if we do a good job, we need just to point Jesus to people and stop looking at what the church is doing wrong. Because we do so many wrong things. Yeah. But if they're pointing to Jesus, instead of talking bad about everybody, let's talk about the good. Let's talk about who Jesus in our lives, the miracles he's been doing in our lives, because he's the same person yesterday, today, and forever. And he's a God of miracles, a God of love, and he's not going to give up on humanity. He promised that, right? He gave us the beautiful rainbow so we can remember that. Like, and one day he's going to come and we're going to be ready. And so much hope in Jesus.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to end with these guys, the emojis. Okay. So, Rick, when you think of missions, the work of Christ in the world, and maybe even the next, from here onto like 2100, okay, so the next like 74 years of society, you're going to think about missions through our emoji lens. Okay, so blasphemous is going to be, what is the worst idea you can think of in the future happening? What are you skeptical of? What is something inspiring, holy, and ultimately divine? So we're going to go from the worst to the best.
Okay.
Okay? So starting with blasphemous, as you think of missions in the next 74 years, what is the worst idea you can think of?
We continue to hold on to power, that imperial power that we've inherited forever. It's, the thing that frustrates me is I see the addiction to power in the church today. In, like I said, we talked about titles, senior pastor, lead pastor, those kinds of things. And the seminars are all, even on, we don't just talk about being servants, we talk about servant leadership. It's always about leading. Jesus never talked about leading. He always talked about serving, but we always have to
Wow.
tag on that leadership thing. So
Oh,
as
wow.
long as, and I think that's a humility thing and it's a power thing for sure.
Yeah.
So if we keep leaning on that, I think that's the blasphemy. If we need to let go of the leadership piece,
Yeah.
and just be servants.
Wow, that's deep. That's profound, man. That's you might be like punching some like what did you say? Cows?
Bless
Something
are
like
the
that?
meek.
Sacred cows.
Sacred cows, yeah. Okay. What are you skeptical of in the next 74 years?
Skeptical of. I'm skeptical of the modern church for the exact same reason.
Okay.
You and Beto are kind of.
Okay, we're skeptical. Inspired. It starts getting better. What makes you inspired or gives you hope about missions in the next 74 years?
About missions, I'm seeing people paying attention to the past, the problems that we've had in the past, the mistakes we made in the past, and truly with repentant hearts coming and asking others to take the lead. In our association, our new vice president of missions comes from India. He's didn't grow up in America, so he's leading the charge on that.
Wow.
Love it.
Awesome.
That's releasing.
Holy emoji. So what's a holy idea as you think of the church or the missions of Christians in the next 74 years?
The excitement of partnering with other nations to bring missionaries here.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
And finally, the divine emoji. What is just the highest idea you can think of like in the next 74 years? Maybe even a prediction. I don't know, something prophetic.
Oh, I don't know that I'm prophetic that way, but it's Jesus's church. He said, "I will build my church," and if we would let Him build His church and not us feel like we have to manipulate that to take it forward, if we are paying attention to what there's a lot of talk about revival, and there's a lot of social media about revival happening, and there's a lot of events that feel technically like revival, but don't have the substance of life change and don't have the substance of justice and don't have this some of those righteousness pieces that belong to it as well. So there seems to be this thing, but then at the other hand, I do see pockets where God is changing communities and like in new ways, in powerful ways. And that is happening underground, and it's not getting all the popular topic, and it's not getting it doesn't have a CD out, and it doesn't have, all those kind of things going on, but it's happening, and that's exciting. And that's the divine moment that's out there. So yes, so cool. Jesus will build His church.
Amen.
Regardless of whatever we build, He's going to do His own thing.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's so cool.
Hey, Beto, invite them to, if they're close to Orange or live in Orange County, to your church. Where is it?
So we are in multiple places. We're not just Orange.
Yes.
We are a network of house churches. So we're in Irvine, we're in Costa Mesa, we're in Orange, and we're in Temecula. So all of those places have a community that you can connect with.
And how they connect with you?
Probably the easiest way is thebeacon.church is our website.
Thebeacon.church?
.church.
Perfect. So there you have it. Thebeacon.church. We'll see you guys on the next one. Devi tirarmi foto de cuando te tuve. Devi tirarmi. Na, 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 na.